All right, here we go. Let's go live again today, second time today. And I certainly had not planned this, but I think this is important enough breaking news that we need to do a quick live on it. Probably won't go for an hour, maybe a half an hour on this. And I just try to get the information out to you as quickly as possible. We talked about it a little bit on the back end of the last live, but I think it's, as I said, this is big. This is important. And we may have just dodged another 9/11 in New York City. So let's get into what's going on here. First of all, what happened in New York, U.S. Secret Service dismantled a telecom threat near the United Nations, and they say it's within 35 miles of Manhattan. This is the UN building in Manhattan here on the map. If we go to the map and zoom out, 35 miles is about everything you see on that screen. And so I don't know that that means that this represents a direct threat to the UN General Assembly. It could, but there's 8 million people that live in there. And this certainly could be other things as well. We're going to talk about what it might be and what it might not be as we go along. So folks, do me a favor, hit the like button and write in the chat box where you're coming in from. That'll send the message out to lots of other people that we're live, and it'll show up in their feed and they'll be able to get on and watch. So do your friends a favor by posting in the chat. Now, I'm going to go back to the main camera here. And hi, Chuck Holton here, coming to you from my studio in Panama. As I said, U.S. Secret Service just announced that they dismantled what they're calling a telecom threat. Now, you probably have not heard of a telecom threat before. I didn't even know that was a form of terrorism, but apparently it is. So they seized a whole bunch of equipment, 300 what they call SIM servers, and more than 100,000 SIM cards. Think of each one of those as a separate cell phone. But what they do is they build these SIM servers where you can have 30 or 40 or 100 SIM cards in one device, and then you send a message to the device and it sends those messages out over all of those SIM cards simultaneously. It's something that's used a lot by scammers, fraudsters, spammers, things like that. And maybe that's all this was, but this looks like it was much bigger than that. The capability that what they just announced that they picked up had was to generate tens of millions of text messages in a minute. Like that. Tens of millions all at once. This is huge. And the timing just ahead of the UN General Assembly, they actually picked this up a couple days ago and are just now putting it out. But that raises some fears that there was perhaps something big planned for the UN General Assembly. Now, where are they finding these things? That's what I wanted to know. Turns out they were in abandoned apartment buildings and other hidden sites. So they're also saying that no arrests have been made. So there was nobody in these rooms. How did they find out about them? The investigation is ongoing, and that's why they can't really tell us anything. But they did come out with a video, and I'll show you that video here after we get to our sponsor, which is the Wellness Company. Did you know a lot of the methylene blue that's being peddled online is literally the same junk they use in fish tanks? Yeah, congratulations. You're just basically one click away from guzzling aquarium cleaner. Most of those bottles are from overseas sweatshops, never tested for heavy metals and never meant for humans, and definitely not meant to be in your brain. That's why the Wellness Company makes Recharge. It's their doctor-formulated USP grade methylene blue, meaning pharmaceutical quality, not something scooped up off the clearance rack at PetSmart, combined with NAD+ and PQQ, which are ingredients actually backed by research. This isn't the sketchy blue stuff you're going to find on Amazon. Instead, it's designed to optimize your brain function, repair your cells, and keep your energy steady all day long. Translation, you'll actually feel human again without needing 3 Red Bulls and a nap. So skip the fish tank cleaner and get the good stuff. Go to twc.health/hotzone, use code HOTZONE, and you'll get a discount plus free shipping. Again, twc.health/hotzone, code HOTZONE, because your brain deserves better than aquarium supplies. Okay, so I wanted to show you the video that has been put out by the Secret Service, in which they sort of lay out what we know so far. Take a look at this.
Hello, my name is Matt McCool, and I'm the special agent in charge of the Secret Service New York field office.
Man, does that guy look like a Secret Service agent or what?
As a matter of public interest, given timing, amount, and concentration of material recovered during a recent Secret Service Protective Intelligence investigation. Following multiple telecommunications-related imminent threats directed towards senior U.S. government officials this spring, the U.S. Secret Service began a protective intelligence investigation to determine the extent and impact these threats could have on protective operations. This was a difficult and complex effort to identify the source of these fraudulent calls and the impact on the Secret Service protective mission. During this period, we leveraged technical assistance and support of federal partners, including Homeland Security Investigations, the Department of Justice, and the Office of the Director of National Intelligence. We also received phenomenal support from our state and local law enforcement partners, to include the NYPD. The investigation led us to the New York tri-state area, where investigators discovered tens of thousands of co-located and networked cellular devices capable of carrying out nefarious telecommunications attacks. These devices allowed anonymous encrypted communications between potential threat actors and criminal enterprises, enabling criminal organizations to operate undetected. This network had the potential to disable cell phone towers and essentially shut down the cellular network in New York City. These devices were concentrated within 35 miles of the global meeting of the United Nations General Assembly, now underway in New York City. Given the timing, location, and proximity, and potential for significant disruptions to the New York telecom system, we moved quickly to disrupt this network. To be clear, these recovered devices no longer pose a threat to the New York tri-state area. We will continue working towards identifying those responsible and their intent, including whether their plan was to disrupt the UN General Assembly and communications of government and emergency personnel during the official visit of world leaders in and around New York City. Forensic examinations of the equivalent of 100,000 cell phones worth of data is underway. Early analysis indicates cellular communications between foreign actors and individuals that are known to federal law enforcement. Given the sensitivity and complexity of this investigation, we are not able to go into specifics at this time. This is an open and active investigation, and we have no arrests to announce today. Rather, this announcement is designed to safeguard critical infrastructure and responsibly provide the public what we can at this time. The Secret Service will continue to run down all leads until we fully understand the intent of the operation and identify those responsible.
So you heard him say that they identified that some of those devices were communicating with foreign actors. What does that tell you right there? I mean, why is it that I feel like after watching that guy that he should, put up a pen and like go poo and wipe my memory or something? That guy looks like somebody out of a movie, doesn't he? But look, this is what he's saying is that they can't announce any arrests, but it doesn't mean they haven't made any arrests. That's what I got out of that. And I think you can learn as much from what is not said in announcements like this as you can by what is said. And so we're going to go into talk about this a little bit more. Now, as he said, no arrests were announced yet, but the investigation is ongoing. It's a very sensitive investigation, he said, which means there's some, this is bad. This is serious. The officials say that the system posed an imminent threat that could have crippled cell service and 911 service in New York City. Now, Why would somebody want to do that? Well, I mean, as I mentioned on the last live, it's all speculation at this point, but there certainly are scenarios that you could imagine where they shut down cellular communications. Nobody can text or call or email or anything, from their phones throughout New York City, and then they open up with a multi-cell terror attack across the city, that the emergency services are then paralyzed and the whole city is in gridlock, and they can't, get to the area where the attacks are happening in order to respond to those. And so that's a definite possibility. I mean, there's no two ways about it. That is a definite possibility. Hey, Daniel, how's it going? So let's talk about what a SIM farm is and what it isn't. As I said, it's a way to collect. It's a mass collection of SIM cards that's connected to a server, and that hardware is used to mimic thousands of telephones at once. Now, some businesses used to use small versions of these SIM farms for marketing tests. They'd make a bunch of phone calls, basically, smile and dial spam phone calls. But they very quickly came into use by criminals, using them for spam and fraud, and also for anonymous communication. Now, that's another thing that as you look at the way this was set up, you're talking about hundreds of thousands of phones. And if they all start chattering at once, they overload the system. But that could enable a nefarious actor to be able to send messages through. And just by virtue of the fact there's so many messages, the person on the other end would know which one to look for, but nobody else would. And so it could get lost in the shuffle, right? They can think of it as a botnet that's just made out of cell phones, and it's like industrial scale impersonation. Now, lots of scams and fraudsters have been using these things for SMS phishing. They call smishing, trying to send you a fake text from your bank, looks like from your bank, or a fake text that says you have a delivery, click on this link to track your delivery, or you've got unpaid parking tickets, click on this link to pay your parking tickets, those kinds of things, where they're phishing. And if you click on the link, it allows them into your phone and they can take all your data. So this stuff happens a lot, and they find these things. There have been various SIM farm operations that have been picked up and arrested all around the United States over the past few years. Many of them have been run by Chinese or Koreans or stuff like that, which it has its own concerns, right? But they're just using them to scam people out of money. And you can only scam so many people at a time, right? I mean, if you're just picking up the phone and calling people, you're going to have a harder time getting enough phone calls made to put the large numbers through to make enough money to make it worthwhile. But if you can call 100,000 people at once, then you can definitely find those. They say there's a fool born every day. There's a lot of people that fall prey to these things because you get a text and it looks like it's from your bank and it looks like it's kind of urgent and you're going to have a fee if you don't take care of this problem. And so you click on it to find out what it is. I mean, they're very clever. And so I don't fault people for falling victim to these things, but that's one of the reasons why I wanted to do this live, because I wanted to educate you so that you don't fall prey to these things. Don't click on links from anybody you don't know. Don't click on links from your bank. If your bank it looks like a text message from your bank and it's got a link in it, don't click on that link. Go to your bank's website and go directly to them, or call your bank and say, what is this? And I guarantee you, they'll tell you, no, that's a scam. Don't touch it. All right. They use them for robocalls, spoofing the IRS and banks and courts and stuff, just like I said. They do something called SIM box bypass fraud, which is diverting international calls to steal the revenue off of that. That's something I didn't know about. They use it to make fake accounts by, sometimes you make a new account somewhere, they got to send you a text message, and they have AI that can set this up now and do this, send the text message. They have like a burner phone and help to set up bot accounts for propaganda purposes or scamming or whatever. Now, national security problems, those scam and fraud things are not that much of a threat to national security. But what they just found in New York definitely could be, because they said there were over 100,000 SIM cards that had already been activated, and there was a lot more SIM cards than that that had yet to be activated. I did some back of the napkin math on this, and we're probably talking about somewhere in the neighborhood of $3 to $10 million to set up what they just took out in New York. There, a couple of the news items that I saw mentioned that they believe, or they have either found, or they believe they may be about to find similar bot farms like this in other cities in the United States. I saw one that specifically mentioned Los Angeles, that they had found a similar setup there. I can't corroborate that, but if this is bigger than New York City, it's got to be a state actor. I mean, this is likely a state actor, which, Russia, we're looking at you and it's something that they didn't just set up this week, right before the UN General Assembly, to get that many cell phones. And it was more than one location. It wasn't multiple. I'm sorry, it wasn't just one abandoned apartment. It was a bunch of locations around the city. And again, there's a lot more they're not telling us, especially about how they figured this out. But somehow they got a tip or something. He said at the beginning of that they had received credible intelligence threats against high-ranking U.S. officials earlier this year. And that investigation led them to this bust that they made just in the last few days. So these are, without a doubt, national security threats. They could have to do with espionage, just trying to hack in and spearfish our Congress critters or senators or whatever, even the president. But it could be a lot bigger than that. Flooding networks with SMS traffic to jam cell service is a whole lot worse than robocalls. That could provide cover for coordinated terror attacks by blinding the emergency communication systems and keeping first responders from being able to communicate with each other or get where they're going. They could also spread disinformation at a massive scale during a crisis, which could very much increase the body count for some kind of mass terror event. And so again, with this thing costing perhaps as high as $10 million to put in, it almost had to be a state actor. So you're talking the usual suspects: China, Russia, Iran, North Korea. Okay, that and probably we could narrow that down to China and Russia. I don't think Iran is tech savvy enough to do this. Russia is known for stuff like this. And China, like I say, some of the SIM farms that have been picked off in the United States by law enforcement in recent years were run by Chinese migrants. So there's that, right? I mean, so I'm thinking either Russia or China. That is complete speculation. We don't have anything that, but that's been put out into the public about that right now, but it is highly likely to be one of those two countries. If I had to put money on it, I'd say Russia. Russia is ramping up its asymmetric warfare attacks against the West, including the United States, and this is one way that they could do that. Okay, now this poses a public safety risk. If you're not able to call 911 during a fire or a shooting or a medical emergency, it's going to create ripple effect of problems across the board. It exploits infrastructure vulnerability in New York and around the country. Again, I had not thought of telecom networks as an attack surface for terrorist attacks, but apparently they are. And now that I'm thinking about it, man, I'm thinking of the what I call the fiction novel scenarios, where, like, if you were going to write a novel about something like this happening, and I've written several novels, man, your brain starts going like, oh my goodness, what they could have accomplished with this, and still might, because it's likely that they haven't found all of these sites, if they indeed have them spread across the United States. I think what it teaches us is that this hybrid threat, which blends cybercrime, organized crime, and nation-state involvement, it's something that we need to take far more seriously. This could spawn copycat crimes. Officials have warned that there might be more in other U.S. cities. As I said, the cost and the scale of these things are scary. A sim farm timed to coincide with a terror attack could magnify the casualties exponentially. It could be used to push out fake evacuation orders, false alarms. Can you imagine calling in a bomb threat to every major building in New York City all at once? Or something like that, just the sheer scale of chaos that could happen. But my money would be on something far more nefarious than that. If it's not just there for scamming purposes, which would be hard to wrap my head around, $10 million, that scammers could get together $10 million worth of equipment. And then, so I mean, it seems to me something far more nefarious than that. I keep saying that, but I just, man, my brain is coming up with all these ideas right now. It could interfere with financial transactions by disrupting SMS-based verification, where you go to log into your bank and they have to send you a verification code and all that. There are just tons of possibilities. And this, to me, represents a shift in how our enemies are looking to attack us. Gone are the days where they would be so analog as to, hijack airplanes. That's so, 2001. No, they don't need to do that, because they are realizing that our society is so dependent on our electronics. Not just our cell phones, but our online bank accounts, paying with our phones, all that kind of stuff, that they can attack that and cause all kinds of pain and hardship in the United States and maintain some plausible deniability, right? I think that Russia in particular is very, very good at plausible deniability. Now let's noodle for a second what civilians could do, what we can do to reduce our risk of being victimized by something like this. I would say the biggest thing we can do is stay out of cities. I mean, I don't like big cities. I don't like large crowds of people. And this is one of the reasons why. Bad things happen when lots of people get together. So I don't know how much you are able to avoid large crowds of people, to avoid things like public transit or, stuff like that. But I would recommend that you think about that and think about your exposure to those things if you live in the city. Now, you can also, we could say, don't rely on SMS for your security. Use an authenticator app instead, or even hardware keys instead of a text message for two-factor authentication. That's easier said than done. Not every place offers that option, but if they do, it might be better to use the authenticator app on your phone rather than, but if the whole system goes down, I don't know if that would even help. Ask your mobile provider for a port freeze or a secondary PIN to block SIM swaps on your phone. This is one way that they are able to, if you click on one of those SMS messages they send you that's fraudulent, they can take over your phone. If you have an eSIM, like I do on my phone doesn't take those physical SIM cards anymore. So if you have an eSIM, they could replace your eSIM with their eSIM, take over your phone, and you're locked out completely. So you can call AT&T. I know AT&T does this. You can call them and say, I want a port freeze or a secondary PIN to block them from swapping my SIM cards, as I would have to put in a PIN code to do that. Stay very alert for these kinds of phishing attacks. I have said over and over again, don't click links that are sent to you in your email, even if it comes from somebody you know. I always tell people, look, if you got an article you want to send me, copy and paste it into the message, or just tell me where to go find it, but don't send me a link. Don't click links. If you send me a link to a YouTube video, I'm probably not going to click on it. It is just too risky to do nowadays. If you're getting lots of strange texts or phone calls or something like that, you can report that to the FCC. I'm not sure how much good that would do, but you might also want to have a backup communication method with your loved ones. You know, when I went to do reporting on the Boston Marathon bombings, one of the things that we noticed up there was that when the bombing happened, there were so many people there, tens of thousands of people there to watch the marathon, and all of them immediately started texting and calling their loved ones and checking to see if they were okay or letting them know they were okay or whatever. And it just crashed the system. And first responders were unable to communicate with one another for a time because of that. That was the impetus for a nationwide emergency cell network that is separate from the regular cellular network. Now, first responders today use both, but and it's not completely out of the realm of possibility that these server farms or SIM farms could attack the emergency network just as easily as they attack the civilian network. But you might want to think about this and reach out to your family and say, hey, if some emergency happens and you can't get a hold of me, here's what to do. And just come up with a, just come up with an idea like, if you haven't heard from me in several days, we're all going to meet. If we live nearby, we're all going to meet at a certain place and try to work things out from there. Or maybe get walkie-talkies, or maybe even shortwave radio. I have some satellite walkie-talkies that communicate directly with satellites overhead that work from anywhere in the world. So I can have one with my son in Savannah, Georgia. I've got one here in Panama. I can, if the whole world goes to pot, he can turn that thing on, I can turn mine on, and we can talk to one another. There are lots of options out there. And if you aren't sure, just put your situation, your particular details into ChatGPT and say, I'm looking for a backup communication method in case something happens where the cell networks are all down. And give me some ideas. And ChatGPT would give you a ton of ideas specifically tailored to your situation. Okay. Bottom line, the takedown in New York was a close call. They're saying it's not a threat anymore, but it was a network with the power to cripple communications in America's biggest city, at least, and maybe other cities as well. SIM farms are no longer just scam tools, they're potential weapons of mass disruption. And those weapons of mass disruption are serious. I mean, that again, we're just starting to get a sense for how dangerous this could have been. And this case signals that telecom security is now part of national security, and the public and our elected officials need to understand that, the risks, and how to take steps to protect ourselves. So I'll go and answer a few questions real quick. We'll see if we have some questions over there. Let me find my questions and see if we got any. I've seen some going by in the chat, so I'm guessing there's probably some questions on the list. There's the list. Okay. Let's see here. Patty Chapman says, why do it there? I don't know what that, there, do what, where. Julie Spencer says, how can they figure this all out, but they couldn't stop a kid from climbing up on a building and hitting our president in the ear? Yeah, well, there have been some big changes made at the Secret Service since Butler. I guarantee you that. Especially once Trump took office. And the Secret Service is much more serious now than they were just a few months ago, without a doubt. Ms. Tomlin says, why would Russia or China care about what the UN is up to? Well, it's not necessarily, what the UN is up to, but you realize there's a whole lot of important people at the UN, and they've all got cell phones. And those cell phones, if we know anything about those people, is that despite all the warnings, human beings are lazy, and they very often have very poor security on their devices. And so I don't know if it could, if they could do this, but you can bet that there is a tremendous amount of espionage activity, let's say, that's going on around the UN General Assembly. But I think it may have been something much bigger than that. Something designed, like a terror attack designed during the UN General Assembly to just create absolute chaos and lots of casualties. So I think we may have dodged a bullet here. Daniel Berry says, aren't these SIM banks the basis for all the bot traffic around the social media platforms? Yes, not all of it, but much of it, for sure. Keith says, do you know if it's related to your cyber attack story? Well, we don't know. I don't know. If you want to go back and watch that, day before yesterday, I guess, the live we did there, talking about the airline ATC going down in Europe and in the United States, and that could very likely be from a foreign actor. We don't have details on how they got into the air traffic control system. We don't have details on any of that, but somebody does. Somebody is looking into it without a doubt, and it could be related without, sure, absolutely could be. Margie Young says, what was the goal? Cripple communications. Yeah, we talked about that. Patrick Lindquist says, do you feel that the cell phone terrorist plot thing is part of a bigger plan? Yes, I do. I think it was part of a bigger plan. Victoria Powell says, why was this a Secret Service operation, not FBI and CIA? Secret Service is in charge of interstate fraud cases, counterfeiting cases, much more than just protecting the president. They also do event security for the UN General Assembly, so it's likely that they had been, doing advanced party work in New York City long before the UN General Assembly, because you can imagine how bad it would look for America if there was an attack on the UN General Assembly and a bunch of the world's leaders. There's 150 world leaders that are at the UN General Assembly this week. Imagine if, even a dozen of those guys got shot or something like that. I mean, it would be catastrophic in a lot of ways, more ways than one. So Sue Allen says, watching from Central Florida, what was the text message? The message. I don't know what the text message you're talking about is. Lisa Beam says, even though they shut down the sim farm, do you think the original plan they had in mind to carry out would still be in play? No, I think they probably would abandon, they would abort because this was an integral part of their plan, and they will reload and start planning for a different day. That said, you can be certain, without a shadow of a doubt, that there are nefarious actors, whether they are domestic or foreign or both, who are right this minute planning the next major attack in the United States. This is why I've talked about it with my book, Death of Civilization. I'm talking about it some more with my new book that's going to be coming out later on this year. And I highly recommend that you get those and take the steps you need to take to make you and your family safer and more resilient in the case of a generalized or localized loss of civility. Because it's not just likely to happen, it's being planned right now. Could this start a rush on banks so people can have cash? Nico asks. Yes, it certainly could. And that's another reason why I recommended that you have some cash on hand, that you keep cash. And I know a lot of people, that's hard for you. And some people went crazy when I mentioned, have $25,000 cash on hand. That's definitely a big goal. But if you have $2,500 or $250 or even $25 on hand, something so that if there is a run on the banks and the ATMs are all shut down, which I've been there when that happened in Ukraine, and that's no fun at all. Russia shut down all the ATMs in Ukraine a couple of times. And it's like it's one of those events, people will tell you where they were when that happened. Like they remember like when the shuttle blew up, that kind of thing, because it was a major, major attack. How about Signal app? Well, Signal app is good, but it only works if you've got data. And if you're on your phone, you don't have data. My question would be, okay, maybe your landline cable internet might still work if the cell phone networks are down. So make sure that you have a Signal app or WhatsApp or something like that installed on your home computer and linked to your account so you can still get to it if you can't get to it on your phone. It's just an idea. Would this affect Starlink? Probably not. Starlink would be one real good reason to have Starlink, as it probably would not be affected by all the cell networks going down. Mike Silva says, what do you consider to be the most reliable source to get information in case of emergencies or something more serious? Strangely enough, Zello, is it Zello? Is an app that people use in emergencies that I've seen first responders use. I've seen the Cajun Navy use it, people like that. And it basically works like a walkie-talkie using your data. And they can have channels where everybody can listen in on the channel. There are apps you can get that will let you listen to radio stations if you don't have an actual radio. Might not be a bad idea to have a radio somewhere that's rechargeable, that you just keep packed up and in case of a problem. It depends on how bad the emergency gets, right? If there is data, that's one thing. If there's not data, Deborah Fay says, Chuck, do you think we can trust walkie-talkies made in China? Well, I mean, you probably can trust them if you're not relying on them for your life. Anything made in China is going to be garbage. We know that Chinese-made products are incredibly cheap and poor quality. There are very few Chinese products that don't fall into that category. So it would be much better to get like a German-made radio rather than a Chinese-made radio or a Japanese radio, something like that. So I try to avoid things made in China. Is having a VPN helpful? If the network goes down, a VPN is not going to help you, but it could help keep you from being targeted. I try to use a VPN when I'm traveling on my phone, if I'm connecting to any common Wi-Fi, like in an airport lounge or something like that, or at a hotel. I try to use a VPN all the time. It's very important because I've had my stuff hacked before from hotel Wi-Fi's. I was at a hotel here in Panama one time, and somebody was able to go through that network and get into my computer and steal my Facebook account. And then they changed everything to Vietnamese. I don't know why. And started sending messages to all my friends and stuff. And so it took me like 3 weeks to get my Facebook account back. And it was very difficult to do. PC says, could more bad stuff be coming? I would say that is a certainty. Brad Carroll says, can you do two-factor authentication in Morse code? I don't think so. I'm not sure why you would ask that. It's a good question, though. Nicholas Dupree says, does Trump moving military into major cities signal something bigger than he's just trying to fight crime? I think the simple answer is the right answer. He's fighting crime, and that's probably about it. But I could be wrong. Don't know. Okay, so if you want to recap, I'll just give you a quick recap of what the Secret Service said. They came out just a little while ago and said that they have dismantled a telecom threat near the United Nations. They say within 35 miles of Manhattan. Again, that encompasses almost 10 million people, probably, maybe more than 10 million people. So I don't know that saying 35 miles from the UN General Assembly, I don't know that proves anything about them targeting the UN General Assembly, but they certainly could have been. The equipment that they seized included 300 SIM servers and over 100,000 SIM cards that had already been activated, along with a lot more SIM cards that had not been activated, right? Okay, they had the capability to generate tens of millions of text messages per minute. And of course, this happens right around the UN General Assembly taking place this week in New York City. So that raises fears that there was something that was intended to disrupt that somehow or create an attack on that. These sites where they picked up these things were in abandoned apartments and other hidden sites. So not like in a hotel room or something, but I mean, there are a bunch of abandoned apartment buildings around New York City. But again, just back of the napkin math here, the stuff that they found and confiscated today likely cost as high as $10 million. And so what that says is this: even though they say they have not announced any arrests yet and the investigation is ongoing, that's a clue, I would say, that this is tied to a state actor like Russia or China, okay? They say that the system posed an imminent threat that could have crippled cell service and 911 in New York City. So that's your recap. That's what we know so far, and we will keep you posted. Do me a favor, folks, and go to chuckholton.com if you like getting this kind of information. We put out a lot of extra stuff, a lot of summaries, and things like that over at chuckholton.com every day. So become a supporter over there. You get a lot of extra stuff, including not one-on-one, but like Zoom calls directly with me, where instead of having to type what you want to say into the chat box, you can actually talk to me face-to-face through Zoom. We do those once a month, and you are welcome to join us. Just go over to chuckholton.com and become a supporter over there. All right. Make sure you are subscribed to the channel and hit the like button on your way out. I'm going to leave it at that. And thank you very much for watching. I appreciate all of you. It's time for me to go hit my workout. So we'll see you again next time. Take care.